In this video, I'm going to show you some cinematic tricks to use in Google Earth Studio, various route techniques in Blender, and how to overcome certain errors you may receive. We're going to start in Google Earth Studio and create a blank project. I'm going to call this one Commercial. I'm going to switch over to Google My Maps, which will allow us to create a route. I'm going to put in North Vancouver to Granville Island in Vancouver. Then I'm going to move our start point to the center of the Lions Gate Bridge. Then want to make a couple stops on the way. So I'm going to put Canada Place as one of our stops. And I'll move that above our endpoint. And then I'm just going to drag our route so that it goes by BC Place Stadium, and then also over the Granville Island Bridge. Once I've created my map, I can export it as a KML file. I'm just going to export the map I created. And I'm going to give it a less silly name. Now flipping back over to Google Earth Studio, I'm going to import that KML file. By double-clicking on it, I can now zoom in on the Vancouver area. We're going to use this route to align our camera, as well as we'll be importing it into Blender to animate a vehicle. There are two techniques I'm going to be introducing in today's video. One is how to create cuts in Google Earth Studio, and the second is how to use the influence on a camera target. So I've already created one camera target on the bridge for our first frame. Now moving ahead about 5 seconds, I'm going to set my camera position and keyframe just the position. Then going to adjust my position height. I'm then going to set the camera target to where I'd like it. So this is going to be the end of our first scene. We're now going to set up our second scene. So moving the playhead just beyond our last keyframe, we'll press J to go back to the keyframe. We're then going to use the right arrow key to advance one frame. This will create a clean, non-transition cut. We'll then position our camera to where we'd like it and set our camera position. I've zoomed in on the work area so you can see the keyframes over top of each other. We'll now set our camera target again. Once I'm happy with that position, I'll press the Keyframe All button. I'll advance again now a couple seconds and set my camera position. I'll also set a new camera target. As you can see, when I scrub back and forth, the camera seems to twist or rotate. This is due to the easing between keyframes. To fix this, we're going to select all of our keyframes and right mouse click and select Linear. By default, Google Earth Studio will ease in and out of keyframes. To achieve a clean cut, we need to make sure that this transition is turned off by selecting Linear. We'll now navigate over to our third scene. For this scene, we're going to follow a car as it goes around the corner. So again, using the same technique, we'll go to the last keyframe by selecting J when our playhead is just beyond it, then advancing one frame by pressing the right arrow key. We'll then set our camera position. Then scrolling up to the influence item under camera target, we're going to set our influence now to 0. This will make it so we have manual control of the camera now, so we can use our pan and tilt functions. I find using a combination of camera target and manual adjustments gives you the best results. I'll now set the camera for the beginning and end of this scene. Once I'm happy with the positioning, I'll select all the previous keyframes and switch them back over to linear. I'll now fast forward through the next few scenes as it's a duplicate of the same technique. Now moving on to the final scene, we're going to actually reinstate the camera target. On the top of the convention center is a sod roof. We're going to place the vehicle on top of the sod roof. So we want to circle around the vehicle's location. Now add a camera target. I'll now change the influence back to 100%. Using the camera target allows me to circle around the vehicle and pull away for a nice closing shot. I'll set my final position, and I'm going to change my camera target off to the left a little bit so that the convention center appears in the right third of the screen. And finally, I'm going to create a frame with a top-down shot so that I can line things up better in Blender. And so after a quick review, we'll set up our track points. Unfortunately, in Google Earth Studio, the KML file doesn't work well with bridges, and this is where we started our path. What we'll need to do is line up over top of the start point to create our first start track point. So we could create the start point on the water surface or on the bridge surface. I'm going to put it on the bridge surface so that we can use the altitude within Blender to create the correct path in the 3D environment. I'll call this first track point Path Start. I then know I'll need a track point on top of the convention center so that I can place the vehicle there. So right next to the camera, I'm going to place a second track point. And we'll call this, I have some trouble typing this in, but we'll call this one roof. Next, we need to create our track point breadcrumbs so that Blender can see where the altitude is for each point along the path. Just going to reference the original map to see where exactly the path was on the bridge, and it seems to run right down the center. So switching back over to Google Earth Studio, I'm going to start adding track points along the path. For the bridge, I'm just going to place them in the center, hoping that they hit track points from the KML file provided from Google Earth Studio. I won't be naming these track points as they're just breadcrumbs for the KML file. Where I can see the KML route, I'll place my track points right on the route, trying to hit some corners so that the points will connect within Blender. As you can see, the points are concentrated in the areas of the various scenes. There's no need to put the track points in areas I won't be filming. We'll now set our time of day element. We'll select Add Attribute and then Time of Day. We'll set this for sort of the golden hour so that we get some nice color off of the trees and buildings. Now that our project is done, we'll set it to render. And I'll just render this locally on my system. Once the rendering's done, we'll open up Blender. And starting with a new project, we'll delete the default cube, then press N and select the Earth Studio panel. We'll select our footage folder and our first item, and we'll also select our JSON file. We'll then import the Earth Studio project. And we'll set our display to rendered mode, and when we do that, we'll need to make sure that we have our film transparent item selected. Do a quick review of the file, and we'll import our KML file here. So we'll click on the KML route import export, and we will select our KML file. We'll get it to snap to the point path start rather, and we'll set it to NURBS. We'll give it an initial size of 0.01. We're going to be following the terrain, so we'll need to select the JSON file. And we put everything in the one file, so we can select that one again. We'll set our point reduction to 2, and we'll leave our max proximity at 1 meter. So this is one of the common errors that will occur if you import something that the interpreter is not built for. So to fix this, we're going to actually go to Google Earth Studios, or rather, sorry, Google Earth Pro, open it up, and then we'll open the KML file in Earth Pro. We'll then select the path and rename it to a good name, and then we will save it as a KML file. We can then jump back over into Blender, select the new KML file, and import it. Once the file has been imported, we can inspect it for accuracy. And we can see we had a bit of a problem there on the corner. We'll just give it a bit of sunlight here so we can see it a little bit better. And you can see here also it's not appearing at the level of the bridge. So we missed some of our markers on that one as well. So this is fine. We can just re-import it with some other settings. So we're just going to select all of the items in the GES path, delete it. We're going to change our point reduction to 2 and max proximity to 3, and we can import the file there. You'll see now that the path is at the right altitude on the bridge. I am noticing the path, however, is not passing through the center of our track points. This is probably due to our start location being off slightly. So we're going to put our start location as much as we can right on top of the start on the water itself this time. To edit a track point in Google Earth Studio, you first select it, and you can see here I've now reduced the altitude to 1 meter. So that dropped it down, but as you can see, it's not right at the start point. We could move it around with the values of latitude and longitude, or we can do it through the map as well. So zooming in on the start point, you can see we can grab the actual path, or the track point rather, and position it correctly over the KML path. And once we're confident it's over top, now the path itself is starting at 0 meters. The minimum value for a track point is 1 meter. So it's going to hover slightly, but we want to get it as accurate as possible. We'll then go to File, Export, and export the JSON file. Let's give it an _2 and export that. And we'll put that into the folder actually. There we go. Now jumping back to Blender, we'll delete that path again. We'll select our new JSON file and we'll import the KML. Now you see now that it's hovering higher than before. This is because it's still using the initial start point or path start from our original import. So we're going to re-import the Earth Studio file. I'm going to delete all the items in GES World. However, I also deleted the camera, so we do need to add a camera. That is the minimum requirement for the import, is at least 1 camera. So we'll add the camera, import it using the second JSON file. Okay, so we'll have a quick look at the file itself. Looks like we can now import the KML file again. We'll just double check our files and click on Import Route. And now everything's lining up. Now that all the data is imported and correct, we'll organize our GES world into a new collection so that we can hide the individual track points. So we'll go to Scene Collection at the top, then click on the New Collection button, and we'll name this one Track Points. We'll then expand GES World and select the entire hierarchy and drag it into the new collection. We'll then scroll down to the bottom and move our camera back into the original collection. We can now hide and show the track points. Now we're going to actually edit the path itself where it needs correcting. So we select the route path. We'll press Tab to enter edit mode. We can now edit the individual points within the path. On occasion, a point will not line up with its track point. So we can use the magnet tool again and move it to the track point and snap it to the face surface. So we'll just zoom in on this point here. We'll just pull down and you can see that it's attached now to the surface of that track point. We can do this for points along the way to ensure that everything's at the correct altitude. You can also delete points if you need to as well. We can also adjust the XY position of the points if you're not happy with how the KML file was created. So I'll just speed up as I go through the individual points here and make minor adjustments. And now we'll set up the position for the vehicle. We're going to take our track point and align it to the slant of the roof here. So this just takes a little bit of eyeballing it and making rotation adjustments. And once we got the plane set, we can now add a vehicle. We're going to be using the transportation add-on, which I'm definitely getting a lot of use out of. And we'll select a vehicle. I'm going to select this Mercedes, and we're going to change color of it. Looks like we have to add the vehicle first. So I'm adding it to the cursor location. The GES world is 1/100th of actual size, so we'll have to scale this down to 0.01. Now we can apply the color. And so that is correct scale to the environment. Now we'll get this vehicle to be in its correct position, so we'll rotate it where we want to see it and position it. And now we want to snap it to the plane. So we'll use the align to target and pull down, and it will then snap to the plane that we created. And so that looks good. So the vehicle looks a little bit flat right now, so we're going to add a environment. So I've downloaded a file from HDRI Haven that I'm going to use. So we're going to go to our shader, and then we're going to select world. Then we'll be using the texture coordinate node, the mapping node, and we'll connect the two of those, selecting texture. Then we will select the environment texture. We'll connect the vector to the vector and the color to the color. And then we'll select our HDR file. We'll open that up. Now we're only going to be able to see this file with the transparent turned off and in render mode. So now we can see our background HDRI environment, and we can make adjustments to the position of the HDRI using the mapping function, as well as any rotation that we want to. Now I want to get a nice reflection. This is sort of our final shot, so I want to make sure that we're getting a good reflection on the vehicle itself. And when I pass through sort of on the side, it's picking up a fairly bland texture. So I can just rotate the image in the background or adjust its Z or Z vertical position. And so that looks really good there. And finally, what we'll need to do is add a vehicle for our route itself. So we could create a new vehicle, but we'll just duplicate this one because it has all the settings already in there. So we'll just go Shift D. We now have a second copy. We're going to change its location to 0, 0, 0, and its rotation to zeros as well. This will put it at our first point of the path. Then we'll select Add Object Constraint and select Follow Path. We'll then set the up axis to X and follow curve. And we'll then select our target as the route path. Now selecting the route target, we'll go over to the curve properties, and we see that the path animation is now checked. If we slide along the evaluation time, we can see that the vehicle moves along the path. Now go to a portion of the project where we can align the vehicle to the road surface. So here on the bridge should work nicely. I'll use the evaluation time to bring the vehicle in frame. Then I'm going to set my bevel depth now to 0 so that I can see the vehicle. Now selecting the vehicle, we'll rotate it. I want to make it look so it appears on the road surface. To ensure that we're straight, we can view from top and adjust the Z axis. And that looks good. So after a quick review, using the evaluation time to make sure that it looks good at all parts of the animation, we can start setting our keyframes. So we'll go to the first frame and we'll set a keyframe so that the vehicle starts at the far end of the bridge, and hitting the letter I will create our first keyframe. We'll then move to our scene transition point, move the vehicle a little bit, and then press the letter I again. This will set our second keyframe. We'll make sure that the keyframes are set to linear. Then advance one frame by using the right arrow with our mouse over the timeline. We'll advance the vehicle into the first part of the frame. Press the letter I to create a keyframe. And then again for the end of that part of the scene. Create a keyframe, press the letter I. Again, mousing over the timeline, we use the right arrow to advance one frame. Continue these steps throughout the animation until we get to the end. So once we're happy with the keyframing, we can save our Blender file, and we'll get ready here to render as well. So we'll turn on our screen space reflections. We don't have much need for ambient occlusion right now. So we'll do a test render. And we have our track point showing here. So we'll go back and disable the track point collection. And one more test here, and if everything looks good, we can render these files. Create a folder on our system, and we'll call it render, and we'll give this file sequence a prefix, and we'll render the animation. And so for the final result, the vehicles are going a little bit slow at times and a little bit fast at times. But it was a good exercise to go through some of the tips and tricks for creating cutscenes in Google Earth Studio, as well as some of the issues that have come up with the KML import tool for Blender. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. This is the end of the video, so it'd be a good time to subscribe and like. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.